When Apollo 11 touched down on the moon, President Richard Nixon had two speeches on his desk. One to celebrate a historic triumph, and one to mourn a national tragedy. The success of that mission, the moment mankind first walked on the moon, depended on a fragile chain of calculations, coordinates, and courage. If just one number had been wrong, if one decimal had slipped, the Eagle would have crashed, and 3 American astronauts would have died in space. But there was one person who made sure only one speech would ever be needed. Not a general. Not a pilot. Not even an engineer. She wasn't even allowed to use the same bathroom as her white colleagues. Her name was Katherine Johnson. A black mathematician, born into a segregated world, who calculated by hand what NASA's million-dollar computers couldn't. This is the hidden story of the woman who saved John Glenn's life, changed the course of the space race, and went uncredited for decades. She was invisible to the world, until the numbers she wrote in pencil helped land humanity on the moon. Born in 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, Katherine Johnson was the youngest of 4 children in a working-class African-American family. Her father was a handyman. Her mother taught school. Even as a child, Katherine stood out. By 5, she was counting everything. By 10, she was in high school, a prodigy in a world that had no place for prodigies who looked like her. There was no high school for black children in her hometown, so her parents moved the family 120 miles just so Katherine could get an education. She enrolled at West Virginia State College at the age of 14 and graduated summa cum laude in mathematics and French by 18. She could have been a professor, a physicist, a pioneer. But the doors were shut. So she taught math at a black public school, the only job she could get. And then, in 1953, came a letter that changed everything. NACA, NASA's predecessor, was hiring women to work as human computers. The timing was urgent. America was falling behind in the Cold War. They needed talent, and they didn't care where it came from. Well, almost. Katherine was assigned to the West Area Computing Unit, a segregated section for black women. Hidden away. No nameplates. No credit. They weren't called scientists. They weren't called engineers. They were called computers. They did math. Quietly. Invisibly. Katherine couldn't use the same restrooms. She couldn't drink from the same coffee pot. To relieve herself, she had to walk over half a mile across the Langley campus. But Katherine had more than equations in her pocket. She had courage. When she saw engineers making errors, she corrected them. She asked to be in meetings. She pushed to review reports. It wasn't just bold. It was dangerous. A black woman speaking up to white male engineers in the 1950s South, she risked her job every day. But Katherine didn't just want to be part of the mission. She wanted to guide it. And soon, they realized they needed her. By the early 1960s, the US was deep in the space race. The Soviets had launched Sputnik. Then they sent the first man to orbit Earth, Yuri Gagarin. The pressure on NASA was overwhelming. John Glenn was the country's best hope to become the first American to orbit the planet. But there was a problem: the computers calculating his re-entry trajectory were glitching. If the math was even slightly off, Glenn would either burn up in the atmosphere or skip off the Earth's surface into deep space. So John Glenn said 5 words that changed history: get the girl to check. The girl he meant was Katherine Johnson. The same woman who wasn't allowed to put her name on reports. The same woman who walked a mile to use the restroom. Katherine double-checked the numbers. By hand. Using pencil, paper, and a slide rule. Her calculations confirmed the trajectory, corrected the errors, and gave NASA the green light. On February 20, 1962, John Glenn soared into space. And safely back, thanks to Katherine's math. It should have been her moment. But the cameras weren't pointed her way. Still, she wasn't finished. Over the next decade, Katherine helped design calculations for the Apollo missions. When it came time for Apollo 11 to land on the moon, a new problem emerged. NASA's computers predicted a landing zone full of jagged boulders and slopes that could destroy the lunar module. So again, they turned to Katherine. She recalculated the trajectory, by hand, and helped craft a new path that guided the Eagle safely to the surface. The world heard Neil Armstrong say, "That's one small step for man." But behind that step was Katherine Johnson. Katherine's contributions were groundbreaking. But in the official reports, her name was absent. She continued working at NASA through the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. She calculated emergency backup procedures for astronauts in case of computer failure. She was one of the few women, let alone black women, invited to author scientific papers. But even then, her work was often credited to male supervisors. In 1986, she retired. Quietly. No celebration. No headlines. No public recognition. She had helped launch the space age, and was almost entirely erased from its history. Katherine Johnson didn't ask for fame. She asked for a chance. A chance to prove that brilliance has no race, no gender, no limits. She showed us that genius can be quiet. That history can forget, but truth remembers. If Katherine's story inspired you, share this video. Because there are more hidden figures waiting to be found. Next week, the deaf woman who helped invent the phone, and was erased from history books. Below, links to support girls in STEM, the Hidden Figures book, and courses inspired by Katherine Johnson.